Hey everyone, Haz here. Welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a different type of video to normal. I'm going to start a new series where I break down champions. And first up here I want to talk about Chee'ilth. So the reason I'm choosing Chee'ilth first is because I'm really enjoying her at the moment at rank 3. And I feel like she offers a lot of utility and a lot of impact on the game, which not a lot of other champions have. So I'm going to talk about her first. So first up, we'll get into her attributes and kind of base stats. So her health is above average, which is pretty nice, and her attack is about average, which is good. Onto stat focus though, I think the best choice for stat focus for her is crit rate in general. If you're in like a war or a battleground situation, you might consider block efficiency or physical or energy resist as well. And both of those are completely valid, just because you might want to be more tanky against certain champs and use less potions in war and things like that, and that's perfectly valid. But in general, I think if you're doing casual questing and in most situations for highest damage output, crit rating is definitely the best way to go here. You wouldn't want to use special damage and you wouldn't want to use crit damage rating, because you can increase her own crit damage rating throughout the fight, and also specials don't really do too much damage anyway. So yeah, I think in general crit rate is the best choice for her, and block penetration is probably best on defense, although I've seen some people use a couple of different stat focuses like physical resist as well, but overall I think block penetration is the best way to go for her there. Moving on to her base abilities though, let's get into it. So against Gamma opponents, which are these 13 champs here, plus there's also Bahamut and also the leader as well, but for the most part these 13 Gamma champs we're going to see most commonly at the moment until the leader becomes more popular and more widely available. Anyway, against these Gamma champs, she's going to gain 40% potency to her personal debuffs, that's her bleed and her tranquilize. And the reason this is so nice is, even though she can increase her own bleed potency throughout the fight, having that 40% base kind of buffer bleed potency is really good to just kind of get started out of the gate and just dealing massive damage. So that allows her to get a big leg up in battlegrounds, a big leg up in war as well, where you can just start dealing more damage more quickly. So that's really great. Additionally, because her Tranquilize gets extra potency, it means she's going to be better at fending off debuffs against Gamma champs as well. So that's really good for like Immortal Abomination and then any of these champs on hazard shift nodes or debuff nodes as well. So that's really great. Additionally, her synergy bonuses gain a small bonus, but to be honest, like, you don't really use synergies, so this doesn't matter too much. It's mainly just for casual questing. This can be kind of nice to have. Moving on here, as an attacker, her personal debuffs gain 30% duration. The reason I like this a lot is because it essentially acts like a buffer for your bleed duration and your tranquilize duration as well. If there's a node or champ ability that will reduce your debuff duration, this is going to kind of kick in afterwards, and so you're still going to get some duration even if they reduce it by quite a bit. I use this a lot against Future Ant-Man, I use it against Rogue and Blade, because against those champions, when they reduce your debuff duration, you feel like you can't really get a lot of damage out, but with Chee'ilth, you do have that kind of base 30% duration, which is great, especially for your bleeds. And this actually does stack with deep wounds as well, so I run 3 points I believe in deep wounds, so I get an extra 1.5 seconds duration, in addition to the standard 30%, which is a couple of seconds as well, which means my bleeds still go decently well against these champs that would reduce debuff duration. But at base, these debuffs will be 11.5 seconds for the bleeds and 15.5 seconds for the tranquilize, from 9 seconds for bleeds and from 12 seconds from tranquilize. So getting that 30% is nice just in general matchups as well. As a defender, her debuffs can be inflicted through block. That's pretty good, but I don't think you're putting her on defense to kill the opponent, just to kind of stall them mainly. So this is nice if you run like Inequity, I guess. If they bleed through block, they can take some damage as well, but I think overall, this is just kind of a nice to have thing. It's not something you need to pay super close attention to unless your champ is vulnerable to bleed, which I don't think you should be doing anyway. Moving on, let's talk about her spirit charges here. So these go around every 20 seconds, and they max out at 10 stacks in total. So every 20 seconds you're going to get one of these charges, and each charge is going to give you a certain amount of crit damage rating and also 15% bleed potency. The reason this is so good is because not only is crit damage rating great for damage, but also through her sig ability and through stat focus you can increase your own crit rate and therefore get even more yellow numbers, and they can be bigger because of this when you ramp up. The more important part though here is actually the bleed potency. You get 15% bleed potency per charge, And if you do some quick math in your head, you'll find out that's 150% extra bleed potency when you're at 10 stacks. That is ridiculous for Chee'ilth, especially in longer fights when you can take her in like these 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 million health pool and get loads of additional damage output from your bleeds. The other thing that's tied to these spirit charges is your cleanse passives. So at the start of the fight, and also whenever the timer expires, you gain 2 cleanse passives. These also max out at 10. The reason this is really nice is it essentially just helps you fend off debuffs. In addition to your tranquilize, which we'll get to later, this is a great way to just remove debuffs off yourself, and it's really reliable. The one kind of caveat I'll put here though is it doesn't cleanse the recoil tree, like double edging the courage, and this is because they trigger on the fight start, not before the fight starts. And if you know anything about cleanse, you'll know that it only removes debuffs when the cleanse is on you and the debuff applies afterwards, not at the same time or before. And so this means because double edge and liquid courage trigger at the same time as the cleanse, they're not removed, which is unfortunate, but I get it for balancing. But these cleanse passes are really useful, and another kind of important point is even if you max like the spirit charge timer, it's going to continue to tick round and continue to give you cleanse passives even after it's maxed out at 10. But your cleanse passes, they'll also only stack to 10. So that's an important note there. Moving on here, we got her sister Eagle, and this is when blocking. So when you block, you're going to cap the opponent's attack rating at whatever it was at the start of the fight. Essentially what this is doing is just taking a reference from whatever the starting value was. So let's say it's 5,000 attack, and it's just applying that attack rating to whatever the hit is. The reason this is so good is because I talked about it in my war videos, but essentially it just removes fury effects when you're blocking. And the reason this is really good is because Chee'ilth, often you find yourself fighting champs like science champs that gain furies throughout the fight, or they might gain an attack increase off of a node or something like that, and this just essentially prevents all of that. It makes her way tankier. It's great for Photon, it's great for Titania, it's great for Thing, it's great for so many champs that increase their own attack throughout the fight. But there's one caveat I want to make very clear. This is attack rating reduction. It doesn't just reduce damage coming into your block. So this means it's not going to stop block penetration, it's not going to stop reductions to block efficiency, it's not going to stop prowess from reducing damage. This is only attack rating reductions. And this is really important because it means that she's not going to just be able to block everything and take no damage. It's fantastic for the situations where you have opponents that increase their own attack by a lot, and then you have to block that to, stop you from getting hit. It's great for that. But as soon as they start reducing your block efficiency, or they have massive block penetration like from Pierce, or if there's huge prowess in your blocking specials, this isn't that useful anymore. So it's not a catch-all for every ability in the game that does block damage to you, but it's still extremely useful for those situations, especially against science champs and against nodes in war and battlegrounds that have huge furies and huge attack increases. It's still extremely useful for that, but I just want to call out that it's not useful for everything that does block damage to you. But going back to how this ability is actually really useful, if you well-timed block, you actually reduce this attack rating to 50% of what it was at the start of the fight. So if it's 5,000, this goes down to 2,500, which is really good. The other reason you want to parry is it's actually going to shorten the spirit charge timer by 5 seconds, which is just going to allow your spirit charges to come around that much quicker. So mastering parrying and reparrying is going to be really key to playing Chee'ilth the right way. Moving on here, let's talk about her bleed debuffs. So bleed debuffs, they trigger on every medium attack and also on your heavy attack as well. And this is important because bleeds are your main source of damage. So like I said, the bleeds have a base duration of 9 seconds, but this goes up to 11.5 seconds with the 30% bonus duration as an attacker, which is really good. The other thing is, if you were to punish the defender's heavy attack or special attack, then you're going to shorten the spirit charge timer by 7 seconds. And that's really useful because that means they can come around even quicker. So you can kind of use this in combination with reducing the timer by 5 seconds when you parry, with also this 7-second reduction when you punish a heavy or special, and it just goes around super quick. You can build your bleed potency, you can build your cleanse passive super quick just by baiting heavies and countering and then parrying a bunch as well. So that's really useful, and we're going to look at that more later, that kind of playstyle, as we get into some debuff control matchups. Moving on here, when you punish a heavy or special with your own heavy, you're going to pause all personal debuffs on the opponent for 5 seconds. So this is all your bleeds that you inflict and also the tranquilize that you inflict as well. And this is really key for Chee'ilth in longer fights where you can stack up loads and loads of bleeds and have them ticking for so long. And this is really where she starts to shine, when you build up your cleanse charges and your spirit charge timer. When you make that 10 stacks and you get 150% bleed potency, and then you can keep pausing your bleeds as well, her damage just skyrockets. And this also plays well into the spirit charge timer reduction as well when you punish a heavy or special, because you're pausing and you're reducing the spirit charge timer. So this is really key for her. If you're trying to ramp up within a fight, you can keep your damage by punishing with a heavy and also build your damage by also punishing as well, which is great. The other part of the heavy, it's going to just inflict a total of 3 bleed debuffs, so an additional 2, which is nice because if you use heavy attacks a lot, then you're going to get even more bleeds, and especially if you use that with the pause, you can stack up bleeds quite quickly. Moving on here, the special 1 is going to give you a Grizzly's Grip passive. Essentially, this is just a grip passive. It allows you to ignore Unstoppable, which is really good. This lasts for 16 seconds as well, so you can keep it up pretty much for the whole fight if you wanted to. And the other part of this grip is it's going to make all your attacks have a 50% chance to inflict a bleed. This is really good because it just means you get more and more damage out of Chee'ilth, which is fantastic. And this actually feeds well into her playstyle, one of her playstyles, which we'll talk about later. Moving on here, her special 2 is going to inflict a 50% tranquilize for 12 seconds, but this actually goes up to 15.5 seconds when you account for the 30% extra debuff duration as an attacker. And the reason this tranquilizer is good is because not only does it stop debuffs, it actually also ignores miss as well. And furthermore, whenever a miss or a debuff is prevented, you're going to pause tranquilize for 3 seconds. And if you remember from before as well, you already pause your personal debuffs when you punish a heavy or special with your heavy. So you can use this in combination with the actual tranquilize pause itself, and you can get huge duration out of this tranquilize, which is really, really nice. And even though it is non-stacking, you'll see that especially against Gamma champs, and also when you combine the cleanse as well, she is essentially debuff immune. I mean, not quite, but she can fend off so many debuffs for so long and do such a great job at it. So that's a really key piece of her kit right there. Lastly, I will talk about her special 3 here. So it can only be used once per fight, and it's very similar to how Diablo works, where if you get to 3 bars, you can only throw a special 2 after you throwing a special 3. So it's fine, just means that you can only use it once, which is kind of good actually. I kind of like that because it's a pretty overpowered special 3. It's mainly used for long fights or if you're at low health, and I'll talk about that now. So you gain a 35% vicious passive, and this is indefinite, so it lasts for the whole fight. As you can imagine, this is mainly used in longer fights because you want to ramp up the bleed potency even further, and this is really, really nice for that. But in more practical matchups, in more like casual matchups, you're going to use the special 3 for the regen. This regen is extremely powerful because it actually works in 2 different ways depending on how you use it. So it gives you a 15 second regen buff, and it heals either 50% of the health you've lost in this particular fight, or it heals 30% of your missing health, whichever is higher. And this is really good because it kind of gives you the best in any situation. So if you're taking it a 1 fight and you lose like almost all your health, you're going to pop the special 3 and heal back half of what you lost. So if you lost 60% of your health, you're going to heal 30% back. If you lost 80% of your health, you're going to heal 40% back. So that's a huge heal. But also if you're questing with her and you might take a bit of chip damage throughout the quest on each fight, guess what? Pop the special 3, you'll get 30% of your missing health just healed up, which is really, really nice. So I liked how that regen works. I wish more champs had regen like that because it just gives you the best of any situation, which is fantastic. Anyways, moving on to her signature ability. So this essentially, in short, allows her to fight bleed immune champs really well. So whenever there's a bleed immunity effect triggered on the opponent, you're going to gain a precision passive, and this increases your crit rating by quite a bit. She doesn't need high sig for her to be able to crit a lot, even low sig is fine. And the reason this is so nice is because, as I mentioned before, you can increase your own crit damage through your spirit charges. And when you combine that with these precisions, you crit a lot and you crit hard. So this is really nice against bleed immunes. It's not a total, like, make up for her bleeds, so she's still going to lose out on some damage against bleed immunes, but it's a really good substitute to be able to still deal damage against them and still get some decent numbers. The other part of this is, while she has these positions up, she can actually crit through block, which is good on defense mainly, but even offensively, if you have to crit through block for a node or something, this can be pretty useful. The second part of the SIG states that she essentially is just going to instantly heal up a certain percentage of any damage dealt to her by physical damage effects. This includes bursts of physical damage, which we're going to show. It also includes rupture effects as well. But I've noticed it's a little bit bugged at the moment, so I might have to put in a ticket about that because I'm not sure. It's not really healing correctly, but of the clips I do have, it's working correctly in these clips, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, the great thing about this also is you can actually add recovery to this as well. So currently it's 61.58% at SIG 20, but if you have recovery, which most of you do, this is actually going to be 70% healing instead. And if you guys are wondering about the SIG level you need to get over 100% healing on physical damage effects, it's SIG 176. When you include recovery, if you take it to SIG 176 and you have max recovery, you actually heal more than 100% of the damage that you take from these physical damage effects, which makes us so good for these nodes, and we're just going to be seeing more and more of them as time goes on. But anyways, that's going to do it for all the abilities. Now I want to talk to you about her playstyle, how to use her, how to get the most out of her. So let's jump to that. So the first section here, we're going to look at playstyles and damage. There are 3 main playstyles of Chee'ilth, and I'll show the damage loop for each of those, and then afterwards we'll look at her longer fight damage and how she fares against Gamma champs as well. So moving on to the first playstyle here, it's really simple. Just parry, 5-hit combo, use your special 1. It's incredibly simple and it's great to yield some pretty good damage, and it just have a basic rotation just to fall back on if there are any complex nodes that prevent you from doing anything super fancy. So this is one of the things that I am really interested in with Chee'ilth, is the fact that you can kind of do any rotation and do anything and still get pretty good results, something I talk about in my war videos a lot, and this is a perfect display and a perfect reason why I believe that here. You can see we're not going for any heavy attacks, we're not doing anything super fancy with punishing. All we're going to be doing is just 5-hit combo, special 1, we're going to parry as much as we can, and just watch the damage numbers increase slowly as the fight goes on. So this is 500,000 health here, 550,000 health against Winter Soldier. The common punching bag, I mean, we're starting to get into, you know, bigger punching bags now, but this is just the standard one here. You can see here, the damage already, even just like 30 seconds into the fight, is already pretty solid, and it only goes up and up, you know. I mean, if you are new to the game, this is the perfect playstyle to start on, because you still get good damage and you don't have to do anything risky or anything like that, just whatever you've learned, you know, throughout your time playing, which is great. And then as you get more kind of in depth with Chee'ilth and you start learning more mechanics and more things about the game, you can begin to then weave in heavy attacks, weave in lots of different punishing, you know, punish different specials, parry lots, and get your spirit charge time around more quickly. For this second playstyle here, this is mainly for long fights. This is literally only baiting heavies and heavy punishing. This is for those people that want the max damage. And you're not going to be using specials here because you're going to optimize pausing your bleeds. You can go for a special 3 in longer fights for the vicious, but you don't really need to. This is really your damage playstyle. This isn't one where you go for lots of utility with your specials. This is just pure damage. This is your heavy attacks, keeping your bleeds paused, and then going for special 3 to get even more bleed damage. The beauty about this rotation is that not only are you applying 3 bleeds every heavy, you're also pausing your bleeds a bunch and shortening the timer as well for your spirit charges. So it really is just optimizing Chee'ilth to build the most damage as quickly as possible. That's one of the things that I love about her as well, is that if you want to play her this way and get the most out of her, she does incredible damage, especially in longer fights, once you start ramping up a lot. You can see here I'm not going to go for any specials, and even though it's only like 10 seconds slower than the 5-hit combo thing, that just shows how good the 5-hit combo rotation actually is. But as we get into longer fights, you'll see this rotation start to climb ahead quite a lot more. Like you can see in Necropolis fights and stuff, this rotation is so much better than the previous rotation in longer fights. But in average questing fights, when there's shorter health pools and shorter fights, you know, the rotation doesn't matter as much. So moving on here, I'm going to show you a bigger example of this just because I feel like a 500,000 health pool doesn't really cut this and show you the true value of this rotation. So we're going to go ahead against Red Hulk here. He is Gamma, so this is another first showing of Gamma champ, which is really great. You just get 40% bleed potency. We also have class advantage here, so we're expecting her to do quite well here. But as I said, because she's a long fight champ, she does take a bit to get going, so she's much better in those like longer fights like Abyss or Necropolis, you know, there's like multiple million health pools. Whereas here, he's only got 1.5 mil, which is not huge by game standards these days. You can see here I'm going for the exact same rotation, just pretty much baiting heavies, baiting special ones, sticking to that to keep my bleeds paused and also build up my spirit charge timer. But you can see here, he's melting pretty quick already, and we're not even that far through the fight yet. You can see here, we're literally just going for heavies, and the damage is climbing slowly but surely. Now we're at 6 charges, and we got well over 30 bleeds now, so he's ticking away quite a lot. See here, we're up to over 40 bleeds. He's losing like a few percent health every second, and now he's just dead. And you can kind of see the trajectory here. You can see how much your damage increases over time as the fight goes on, as you stack more and more bleeds. But moving on to this third playstyle, this is best for like kind of in the middle short fights, like medium fight rotation, where you use heavies and special ones. So it's kind of a mix between the first two playstyles. And the idea here is that you apply way more bleeds because of your grit passive, which gives you a 50% chance to apply an extra bleed on every hit, but also using heavy so you can pause the bleeds and move your spirit charge timer more. So this is a really good rotation. It's one that I often use when there are no nodes or it's very simple and you can kind of just go to town on the opponent. I mean, in general, I kind of like to use the second rotation for long fights, but this is good for short fights and medium fights where you don't need to focus all the time on pausing your bleeds. You just want to get a lot of bleeds quickly and then keep them up as relatively well, I guess. And there's also doubles as giving you the unstoppable counter as well. So this is great for damage and also having the unstoppable counter utility too. Whereas the previous rotation, you don't really get any of her special attack utility. Here you can see we're just going for loads of heavies. It's literally just balls to the walls, this damage. And this is, I think, about the same duration, maybe a bit shorter than the previous fight in terms of a short fight. But yeah, in general, this rotation is best for like any sort of casual questing content. It's good for EQ, good for battlegrounds, it's good for war, it's good for anything that's kind of around your 200, 300, 400 health K mark. Yeah, I mean, anything above that, you kind of want to start going for the other rotation where you can stack more and more bleeds, which we're going to show here. But yeah, so moving on here, we got this Jubilee. This is in Necropolis. The reason Chee'ilth's so good for this is because you get way more attack on your heavy attacks when the heavy attack orange mode is up, so you get way more bleed damage. And in this fight, she works really well because Jubilee likes to throw her special one a lot, so you can use that by just spamming your heavies in the corner, and as long as she's fairly cooperative, then she's going to keep throwing special ones and you're going to keep getting huge damage. So in addition to this, another great part about Chee'ilth for Necropolis is when you get to half charges, opponents in Necropolis will gain loads of attack rating, but because of Chee'ilth's attack rating through block, she's actually going to essentially negate this through block, which is really, really nice. So that's just one of the main reasons why I love her in long form like this, in addition to just her huge damage output as well. But I do want to call out that this damage is not what you'd see in normal fights. This is just in the Jubilee fight because you get way more attack on your heavy attacks. Still, it's a fun fight to do and it's a good one to show, so I thought I'd show it. You can see here we're getting loads of bleed damage here. She's actually going down pretty quick. Even though this is 2 times speed, she's still going down fairly quick, which is really nice. Here we get to the half kind of charges phase where you get the root, and the root actually does help her. Similar to someone like Kate, where you want to punish specials a lot, this is quite nice. You can easily punish them and keep your bleeds paused really nicely. You can see in this root phase we deal way more damage because we keep our bleeds paused for much longer, and she's pretty much dead. You can see we are taking a bit of block damage. We have to block more specials during the root, so it does lead to more block damage because their attack is still high at base, but it just means we don't get absolutely destroyed through block like some champs do. Moving on here, we got this Abomination. Again, Necropolis, same path. But the reason Chee'ilth's so good for this is because Mortal Abomination is Gamma, as I explained earlier. And with the Tranquilize and the Cleanse, you can deal with his poisons and weakness debuffs pretty easily. The biggest thing here is you don't want to let him get to 12 self-poisons, because if he does, he can inflict Acid Burn on you, and Chee'ilth has no way to stop that. So you want to just go for baiting special 2s to apply his aura. That's going to mean that he consumes some of his poisons, and as long as you have your Tranquilize and Cleanse up, the aura isn't going to give you too many poisons, which is nice. Additionally, the Tranquilize also reduces the chance that he's going to apply poisons on himself from a special 1, so that helps a lot in just the rhythm of the fight and making sure you don't get, acid burn yourself. So here we're going to be on special 3, mainly for the Vicious, but also the regen is pretty nice as well. You can see we're already doing some pretty nice damage thanks to him being Gamma and also just being fully rammed. You see that bleed damage is really nice there. And the regen is ticking us up quite a bit now as well. We didn't lose too much health, but it's still nice to see that, it tops us up a little bit. Here, he's getting down. You can see we're keeping our Tranquilized Pause pretty effectively. That's mainly because we keep punishing specials with our heavy attacks. Like I said, in the abilities, you can keep your debuffs paused, and that includes your Tranquilize. We're also pausing the Tranquilize whenever debuffs fail as well, so you can keep it up for a pretty long amount of time as well. Way more than the additional 15.5 seconds. You can keep it up for 30 seconds or maybe even longer in lots of different situations. And see, we keep it over here for ages, and by the time it falls off, we can just throw another special 2, which is fantastic. And by this point, he's going down pretty quick. I mean, we had our bleeds fall off a little bit, he was a bit passive, but now we're getting back, starting our rotation and stacking way more bleeds, which is really nice. You can see we finish this fight decently healthy. The fact that she can solo Necropolis fights like this and stay at pretty decent health is really impressive. She can't solo as many fights as like Kate or Aegon can, but she can do, I'd say, about 20, which is really nice. She's definitely a decent option for Necropolis, and if you have no one else, she can be a pretty good workhorse. So that was a pretty nice fight. Moving on, I want to show you some more damage from her just against this Labyrinth Starlord. So this guy has 3.3 million health, and you can see here we're getting so many bleeds. So we're at 34 at the moment. I've already gone for a special 3, so we get max damage. I think we get to like 50 bleeds in this fight, and it's just crazy damage. So yeah, Chee'ilth has loads of potential to be a great long fight option, as you've seen, and I have no doubt that whatever future content comes out, she's going to be great for that as well. He does evade us here, which means we do lose a lot of our bleeds, but it's still fine. Still trucking along, doing some pretty decent damage. Yeah, he has Furies, but they don't really matter because we are Chee'ilth and we've got attack rating capped through block, which is fantastic. So here, 50 bleeds, and you can see how much damage that's doing. It's crazy damage. Obviously Starlord isn't Gamma, so you don't have that bonus, but just having the max Spirit Charge cap and then also having the Vicious helps a lot. And we're going to move on to some Gamma opponents now. So starting off with this Sasquatch in Battlegrounds. So Sasquatch is Gamma, as I said before, and in this fight here, we're mainly just going to be going for heavy attacks to try and keep our bleeds paused. Chee'ilth isn't the best champ for Battlegrounds, she's not the fastest. I'd only really take her for Gamma champs unless there's like a really specific fight you need her for. And in this meta she's a bit slower as well because of the armor, so your non-crits aren't dealing that much damage, so that's a bit unfortunate. But here, this is a rank 2 Sasquatch, so pretty beefy boy. I think we're going to take him down in around a minute, which is pretty decent for Sasquatch. I could have played this better for sure, and had it been a different meta, I would have been even faster with this as well. But yeah, a rank 2 Sasquatch is still pretty good for, around a minute. Here you can see we're going for a special 1, going to ignore that grit for when he triggers Wrath. We got a bit unlucky with the Wrath trigger as well, he could have triggered it earlier, so we could have got more damage off, but either way, it's still fine. Yeah, and he goes down. So it was about a minute total fight time, a bit less than a minute, so that was pretty solid. And then moving on here, I'll show you another Gamma champ. This is Overseer. This is in Eternity of Pain. This isn't something I've done for a long time, but it's nice to jump back in here and see that she can do a few of these fights. So this wasn't really that difficult of a fight in general, but for Chee'ilth she works really well because she has the Cleanse, which removes Overseer's special concussion, and also you remove the stun from encroaching stun as well. And you can just deal huge damage as well, which is great. Here there's also some Nullify as well. but it doesn't really matter too much. I think those rich get richer as well, but as long as you keep on top of your heavy punishes, you can keep your bleeds up pretty efficiently and not have to worry about anything. Yeah. So here, going for special 1, I'm doing that rotation as specified before, going for heavies and special 1s, just for some extra bleed damage. Here I missed the bleed, the heavy spacing, which is completely my fault. Here I do a heavy, but it cancels because of the stun coming in, so I cancel into special 1. Again, just a bit of an error, I should have seen that coming. Go for another heavy bait here, inflict more bleeds. Here I'm going to go for a light and effectively space it correctly. Go for another special 1 to ignore the encroaching stun. And you can see now he's below half, he's melting pretty quick. I think he had like 800,000 health around that kind of region, so doing some nice damage here. And even though I've had some mistakes, we're still looking okay in terms of health, which is fantastic. And I'll show you another EAP fight later, which shows more of her utility, which is really, really nice. So moving on here, this is in War now. This is the last Gamma fight I'll show. This is an Absorbing Man in War, so the nodes aren't really important here. There are no nodes that can really affect the fight. The main thing is just the Absorbing Man, right? So you don't need the Sig ability to do this fight, even though he is bleed immune or Uru form. The idea is you keep him out of Uru form for as long as you can, and that's because you get 40% bleed potency, and so you can just kind of nuke him down with bleeds. So here we're going to just be baiting heavy attacks. His heavy is really easy to counter, and then you can kind of just watch the damage, just take him down, and bait special 2s as well. So here he's like almost dead. It's like 30 seconds into the fight. So yeah, really, really easy fight for Chee'ilth there. Next up here, we'll talk about most of her utility that she has to offer. First up, we're going to start with the special 1 grit utility. That's her unstoppable counter. Really, really useful stuff. Then we're going to go into her special 2 miss counter. That's via the Tranquilize, and that's great for Falter nodes. It's great for champions that have miss mechanics as well. We're going to talk about the debuff control next. That's probably her strongest point, where she can use her cleanse and tranquilize to mitigate debuffs. That's great for hazard shift. It's great for champion abilities that apply debuffs as well, loads of science champs. Then we're going to talk about her attack rating cap. That's what I talked about earlier against Photon and champs with loads of furies. She can essentially just bypass all that. Then we're going to talk about her physical damage heal. This is how she heals from her rupture, from any sort of thorns or anything like that. And then we're going to finish off talking about her bleed potency and bleed duration interactions, so how she can still kind of deal some good damage against those matchups. So first up here we have her unstoppable counter. This is really, really nice. This is against Eternity of Pain Craven, so this is the Riot node. So whenever you knock him down with a special, he's gonna activate an unstoppable buff, and then you have to use a heavy attack to remove it. But you can see here we can just completely ignore it because we have grit, so we can just ignore the unstoppable, which essentially makes this node really, really easy. It's almost useless to us. Here we can't punish because we don't have grit up, but we can just special intercept and get another grit up for us. And then we can also use our heavy attacks to remove the unstoppable as well, which is great. And we can use that to also pause our bleeds, because most of the time you want to, use your heavy when you can actually punish the opponent here. So here, make him go unblockable because the grit's about to run out. He throws another special. We're managing the route fairly well, but it's not something you really need to do for this fight. The main thing is just baiting special 2s because special 1s are annoying with the trap. Here you can see he triggers the unstoppable again because we knock him down with a special. We can also cleanse all the disorient, which is another part of this fight she's really good for. You'll notice in these clips where I'm trying to show one thing, she actually shows like multiple different utilities, which just makes her even better, when I can show multiple things in one fight and show how she counters lots of aspects of the fight. So you can see here we're not taking that much damage because the disorients aren't stacking on us, they're just kind of getting removed as they're applied. Here we're doing some nice bleed damage and we're keeping our grit up, and then we go for a heavy because it's about to drop off, and the bleeds are pretty much going to finish him from here. Just another combo and do a special 1, and he's done. So yeah, that shows how good she is at countering unstoppable. If you're really on the ball, you can have that unstoppable counter up pretty much the whole fight. Here we're going to show her special 2 miss counter. So this is the 8.4 Professor X boss. This essentially, it's got arrogance, so every 10 hits you're going to gain a falter, and then also it's got Professor X's regular falter in his kit as well. There's also a node that increases falter duration as well, so you want to have a really good miss counter over this fight, otherwise it's kind of annoying, you just get constant falter. See here, we're just getting faltered all the time. But you can keep that Tranquilize up for a fairly long time in this fight because you can keep triggering that miss, and when it fails you pause Tranquilize for a bit. Here, you know, it's annoying that he special locks us, so we can't quite throw another special 2 to end it, so our Tranquilize does end up falling off. But for the most part, you can see here, she handled that miss really well, and in most situations when you have falter, she does handle it pretty well like she did there. Now we're going to move on to her debuff control. This is going to be a large portion of the fight. So we can see here, going onto the Scorpion on path 4, it's really important that we have some debuff control in this fight, otherwise he's going to build loads of Furies. And also just it's nice to have some debuff control from Scorpion as well. Here you can see we're building clarity. You don't really have to worry about the tactic for now, we're just focusing on Chee'ilth's debuff control here. So yeah, you can see going for special 1, and he's already down below half. I believe this is off season, so I don't think I was boosted actually as well, so that's another key point here. But going for another combo, and yeah, he's dead. So really great fight. She handled that really well with the debuffs. Like I said before, you can't cleanse the heal block at the start because it triggers at the start of the fight alongside the cleanse, but everything else you can effectively just ignore, which is really nice. Next up, we've got this Kindred. This is a similar sort of node with long distance relationship, so we're going to be getting debuffs throughout the fight, and we have to keep removing them to make sure we don't get Furies on Kindred. The great thing about Chee'ilth though is that even if there's a node that gives him Furies, you know, even if we got all our debuffs, all our cleanse removed, and then we had loads of debuffs on us, we'd still be able to ignore the Furies, which is great as well. But having access to loads of cleanse and Tranquilize to remove the debuffs in the first place is really great. Here, she's actually a pretty good Kindred counter, mainly because you can just go for loads of heavies and just nuke him that way. He's not bleed immune, which a lot of people think he is, but he's not, so you can actually just nuke him with Chee'ilth here. And see, I get pretty close to triggering Outbreak there, but we get just lucky with a pause there right at the end. He goes for another special 1 here, you go for another pause, but I'm already in Outbreak unfortunately, so I'm going to use a heavy here to speed it up by 70% and just stay away to make sure we avoid taking loads of degen damage. Go for another heavy here, trying to get back to a special, but we don't make it, but it's okay because he's just triggered Outbreak, so no issues there, and it goes down pretty effectively. Moving on here, let's talk about some more debuff control here, and what better way to start than with a Freezer Burn path. So, Freezer Burn is a pretty unique node, you know, it's essentially Biohazard but with Incinerate and Cold Snap, so not too many champs can deal with it, especially not in the skill class, so it's really nice to have Chee'ilth just come in and be able to just kind of deal with this really nicely. Here we're up against this Daredevil. I chose this path because it's in Act 8, and so, you know, having relevant content is quite nice for Chee'ilth. You can see here she's just cleansing everything, which is really, really nice. She's just so versatile for these sorts of debuff nodes. You can see even before we get Tranquilize up, she's already handling debuffs incredibly well for this node. And then once we get Tranquilize up, yeah, there's really nothing you can do in terms of debuffs. Like any debuffs that would get through, we're just going to cleanse anyway. So yeah, you can see we're also stacking on bleeds, going for some heavies as well, which is really nice. Gonna bait a special 2 here. Punish that. And you can see here we've still got plenty of time left on Tranquilize, but I think we're gonna go for another one again, just to do some nice crit damage as well. I get some lag here, but it's okay. I'm gonna go for a combo with a special 2, and that's gonna end it. So, you know, she handled that fight extremely well in terms of the debuffs. Yeah, she handled that extremely well. Moving on here, we got this Void. This is in War. This is a Hazard Shift Void, so this is pretty, you know, pretty tough fight. For anyone that doesn't have Cleanse, this fight can be pretty tough because as soon as Void starts debuffing you, you know, you can deal a bunch of damage. You know, you can obviously use Bleed and Shock Immune champs, but for someone like Void, you know, this fight can be incredibly challenging if you don't have immunities to both or lots of debuff control. And you can see she handles it extremely well here. So I don't think we get a single debuff to stick on us, which is really great. Between the Tranquilize and the Cleanse, you know, he doesn't really stand a chance here. Okay, we get one at the end, but for the most part, no debuff stick, which is nice. We finish at, you know, 95%, so really nice. Here we're going up against a Maw. I showed this in one of my wall clips as well, but here you can see we're just going to be heavy countering him. We can also cleanse any falters that we'd get on us as well, but we're doing such a great job at countering his heavy that we don't really need to worry about that here. We're just going to be going for a special 2, that way we can ignore the miss anyway. So you can see there are lots of elements that she counters in lots of different fights, not just the cleanse, you know, being able to deal with the debuffs, also lots of other elements as well. Here he's pretty much melting at this point, you know, we're baiting loads of heavy attacks, which is really, really great, just for more damage. But you can see here, he's going down, he's at 15%, and one more heavy, and he's essentially done for. So really clean fight, took a bit of block damage because it's more, but you know, still a really nice fight. Moving on here, we've got this Photon. This is a great showcase of her debuff control and also how she does in bleed immune fights as well. So here you can see we're using the cleanse to just remove the debuffs, that way we don't get much reduction to our block efficiency and we can just maintain a good tempo as well. Here we got some nice crits on special 2, Playstyle Tranquilize, that way we can stop some more debuffs. She's going to throw a special here and we're going to punish. So in this node we just have to make sure we knock her down to remove the protection, that way we can deal some good damage. We put her into pure light form here, but that's fine, we're going to wait it out. We could bait a special 1 and just block it because we're not going to take that much damage due to the attack rating cap that Chee'ilth has, but you know, in war you want to be safe ideally, so just in case I'd miss that block or whatever, I want to make sure that I'm, you know, playing it super safe. So here we're going to go for another special 2 after we bait a special 1 from her. Going to combo into our special 2 until we pause the Tranquilize, and that way we're able to go in, place another one, and she's going down now. We could have made this a bit faster if we played it more aggressively, but like I said, war and being safe in war is how I like to play usually. So here, finishing off, really nice crits here as well. We are boosted a little bit, but having access to those big precisions and all the crit damage is really great. So that was a really nice fight, really safe fight as well. I didn't feel like I was in danger at all throughout the fight. Here you can see in Battlegrounds, going up against this Photon, and you can see we go ahead and parry this special 1 here, and even though she's in pure light form, it does like 1% of our health. And that just shows you how strong Chee'ilth's damage cap through block is. And it's really good, not just for Photon, but for other champs as well. So here you can see we're up against this Void, and this is unlimited power. So if you know anything about this node, essentially the more debuffs you place, the more Furies they get, and then that's just going to build from there. They're going to gain up to 99 Furies, getting huge attack rating, and if you take a couple of combos, you're probably going to be dead. So having access to this attack rating through block means you can just safely block loads of attacks and not have to worry about taking huge chunks of damage. The other thing about this fight, which I mentioned before, like she does multiple things in one fight, is it's still Void, so you're still going to be taking damage if you're using a normal champ, just from his debuffs, and the Furies are going to enhance that. But because you have Chee'ilth and you have the Cleanse, you can just ignore the debuff. So again, it's just another reason she's just going to be so good for these nodes, these Fury nodes, the debuff nodes, all these things. You know, she's just such a great option for all these things. She can handle them in so many great ways. See here, he's got so many Furies here, but he does no damage through block. Just that attack rating through block is just insane for so many nodes. You know, here he goes unblockable, but it's not that big of a deal. We can finish him off here. You know, like I said, because Chee'ilth rams throughout the fight, she gets more and more damage. So against a node like a blockable Finale, you can just do so much damage towards the end of the fight and just wreck him. Here's another really good showcase. So one thing I want to point out here is that each passive Fury that you see gives him 25% attack rating, and each Fury buff you see gives him 10% attack rating. So at some points in this fight, he has like 250, 300% attack increase. And through block, it just tickles. Like you can see here, we're trying to parry as well to reduce it even further, but we're just taking no damage in this fight. Obviously, Silver Centurion is bleed immune while he has his armor up, but that doesn't matter for Chee'ilth because you have so many precisions, and when you can ramp like this, your crit damage rating, you just deal so much damage. But you can see the main point of this fight is just to show that she just doesn't take that much damage at all from blocking specials. Like most of the time, if you're against Silver Centurion, you just deck special 1 easily, but here you don't even have to worry about that. You can just block or parry them and you barely take any damage even with all these Furies. And this doesn't just work for Furies, it works for any attack increase as well. So if you have a champion that increases their attack rating throughout the fight, if you have a node that increases attack, even if it's not a Fury effect, if it's just an attack increase, it still counts to this. It doesn't work for like prowess and things like that, but just attack increases, so that's really, really nice. But yeah, because prowess isn't an attack increase, it's a special damage increase, because block efficiency reduction and block penetration, they're not attack increases, that doesn't work for this. It's just having that attack rating increase that this kind of stops. But moving on here, we're going to talk about her physical damage healing, because this is something that I find really interesting about her. And even though it's bugged for a couple of things, I'm going to get that looked at. Right now, you can see here, look at this, like you heal back 70% of the damage you take from physical damage effects. You can see here, this is Tantrum. Tantrum's a pretty annoying node when you don't have science champs that can inflict like concussion or innovate to deal with this, right? But it doesn't matter to Chee'ilth. She heals up 70% of the damage you would take from this node, which is fantastic, especially because she has an above average health pool as well. You can see here, like it's just fantastic to be able to just heal back most of that damage that you take. It's really, really great. Here, another showcase of it here, you can see against Doom. Really, really great stuff. You just completely, you don't bypass the glancing, but you bypass the micro reflect node, which essentially just deals damage whenever you glance. So having that just means you can, not take much chip damage in this fight. This is in Gauntlet as well, so Gauntlet, I wouldn't say it's the most relevant piece of content at the moment, but having this ability and just knowing that this exists for her is also really nice. For future content, if there's micro reflecting future content as well, having this is really, really great. Jumping back into Eternity of Pain here, we got this Hercules. So if you know anything about Herc, which most of you probably do, he has 50% base bleed potency. But the reason this doesn't matter to Chee'ilth is because, like I said before, she can increase her bleed potency up to 150%. And this means you actually have a total bleed potency of 250%. Because you take 100% bleed potency at the start of the fight, and you add 150%, which totals 250% bleed potency in total. And Herc reduces bleed potency by 50%. But he actually only reduces the base bleed potency by 50%. So this means it goes from Chee'ilth starting 100 down to 50. But you've still got 150% on top of that to gain from my spirit charges. So that means you can still get a total of 200% bleed potency anyway. So her bleeds still do loads and loads of damage, even against these resistant champs. And this works for anyone that has bleed resist. If you have someone that has 90% bleed resist, let's say, like Lady Deathstrike or Omega Red for example, against those champs, you'd start at 10% bleed potency, but you'd still go up by 150%. So you still have 160% total bleed potency, which is still enough bleed damage. If you take someone like Onslaught even, who has base 150% reduction, you start at negative 50%, but with your bleed potency increase through a spirit charge timer, you can go up to positive 100%. So you still get just normal bleed damage versus Onslaught when you're max round. This has so many offensive applications. It means she can take so many bleed resistant champs. And moving on here, you can see it's the same thing with bleed resistance here. She can still take bleed resistant champs, it's just not going to be as good as, champs that don't have it, obviously. Here you can see you still get some decent duration out of them though, between that 30% base duration and also the deep wounds mastery as well. You can see you still get some nice damage off your bleeds, even if the champ can reduce your debuff duration, which is fantastic. Anyways, that's going to be all for the Chee'ilth video today. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys learned something. Let me know if you like this sort of content, because I'm more than happy to make more. My next episode I was going to do about Vox, so we'll see how that goes. But anyways, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.